The storm struck without mercy, as if the desert itself had decided to rise up in judgment. Black clouds raced across the sky with unnatural speed, devouring the sun and casting the land into a premature night. Lightning tore open the heavens in violent flashes, thunder crashing so hard it rattled the wagon wheels and shook the ground beneath them. Clara Whitlow clutched the wooden bench inside her prairie wagon as another savage gust slammed into the canvas roof, threatening to rip it away entirely. She was only 24, already a widow, already carrying a life her late husband would never meet. 7 months along, maybe closer to 8 now. Time had blurred since they left Independence, Missouri, nearly 2 months back. Somewhere ahead, Reed Coulter's steady voice fought against the howling wind, barely audible as he shouted orders to keep the wagon train together. The wagon master had spent 4 decades on the trail, yet fear carved deep lines into his weathered face as he rode past, reins tight in his fists. Clara's oxen bellowed in panic, eyes rolling white while sand and debris lashed their hides like whips. She tried to soothe them, clicking her tongue the way Eli Boone once had, but terror had stripped all reason from the beasts. The wagon jolted violently as they strained against their yokes, desperate to flee. Everywhere around her, other families fought the same losing battle. Ahead, the Hale wagon had already lost half its canvas. Clara could hear little Lucy Hale crying through the storm, calling for her mother. Nearby, old Ben Carter wrestled with his team of mules while his grown sons scrambled to save what supplies they could. Then the rain came, not the gentle fall of an eastern shower, but a brutal downpour that slammed into the earth like gunfire. In moments, the desert floor turned into a churning river of mud. Wagon wheels that had rolled smoothly for weeks now sank deep and refused to move. Clara's oxen finally broke. With one last terrified bellow, they snapped free and lunged sideways. The wagon lurched off the trail, tilting dangerously as it crashed through sagebrush and loose stone. "Whoa! Whoa!" Clara yanked the reins with everything she had, but her strength meant nothing against 2,000 pounds of blind panic. The wagon gained speed, racing down a slope she hadn't even seen in the darkness. A flash of lightning revealed the horror ahead, a deep ravine, its edges collapsing under rushing water. She hauled back harder, leather slicing into her palms until blood soaked the reins. The oxen tried to stop, but mud and momentum betrayed them. The wagon slid sideways, tipping farther and farther until Clara felt herself lifted into the air. She hit the mud hard, breath exploding from her lungs. Pain tore through her back and belly as she tumbled down the slope, rocks and thorns ripping her dress and skin. Behind her came the sound of splintering wood and screaming animals. Her wagon, her entire life, vanished into the ravine with a deafening crash, swallowed instantly by the storm. Clara lay gasping in the mud as rain pounded her face. Every inch of her body burned, but the pain in her belly was the worst. The baby. Oh God, the baby. She pressed trembling hands to her swollen stomach, feeling movement inside. Still alive. Thank the Lord. Help! The word barely escaped her lips. She tried again, louder. Help me, someone! The storm devoured her voice. The wagon train had to be nearby, only a few hundred yards away. But in that chaos, it might as well have been 1,000 miles. They likely didn't even know she was gone. In weather like this, survival came before mercy. Clara tried to stand, but her legs failed her. The child pressed down hard, and a new, terrifying pain seized her, one she recognized too well. She had helped her sister give birth back in Ohio. She knew the signs. Too early. Too soon. No. 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 She moaned. She dragged herself toward what she hoped was higher ground. Mud clung to her limbs, each movement sending fresh waves of agony through her body. The rain intensified, turning the world into a curtain of water. She could barely see a few feet ahead. Desert plants, hardened by decades of drought, tore loose and floated past. If she stayed where she was, she would drown or be buried alive. Clara crawled forward inch by agonizing inch, her dress heavy with mud and rain, tangled around her legs. She thought of tearing it away, but she had no strength left. The pain in her belly came in steady waves now, relentless and commanding. Time lost meaning. Minutes or hours, it no longer mattered. Part of her knew the truth. A pregnant woman alone in a storm like this should already be dead. Alone in the most violent storm the territory had seen in half a century. What chance did she truly have? Yet Clara Whitlow was born of Ohio farm blood, and her kind did not fold easily. Her mother had carried 8 children into the world and laid 4 into the ground, yet never once abandoned the fields. Her grandmother had driven attackers from her doorstep armed with nothing but grit and a cast-iron pot. The women of her line endured. Even so, endurance had its breaking point. Clara's arms finally failed her. Strength drained away, and she collapsed forward into the mud, face sinking into cold earth. She managed to turn her head just enough to draw breath. That was all she could do. Inside her, the baby thrashed wildly, sensing danger. "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely. "I'm so sorry. I tried." The storm answered with indifference. Lightning tore open the sky again and again, briefly revealing her broken form before plunging her back into darkness. Water surged around her, transforming the desert into a fast-moving floodplain. Clara shut her eyes, surrender creeping in, ready to meet Eli Boone and whatever waited beyond. At least they would be together again. At least their child would never suffer the cruelty of this world. She never heard the horse through the roar of wind and rain, never saw the rider dismount or stride toward her with impossible balance across the slick ground. It was only when powerful hands seized her shoulders and rolled her onto her back that she realized she was no longer alone. Through rain-blurred vision, she saw a face that made her wonder if death had already claimed her. Dark eyes, bronze skin, long black hair plastered to a fierce, unyielding face, a painted Apache warrior, the living terror every wagon train whispered about at night. Yet in those eyes there was no frenzy, no hunger for blood, only focus, resolve. He spoke in a language she did not understand. Then, without hesitation, he lifted her as if she weighed nothing at all. Clara wanted to scream, to strike out, but there was nothing left in her. At that moment, another contraction ripped through her body, and pain stole what little breath she had. She could only cry out. The Apache carried her through the storm, his footing steady, unshaken by the chaos that swallowed the land. Clara's final thought before darkness claimed her was that this was a strange way to die, held by her enemy, yet feeling safer than she had since the storm began. The desert continued its fury, erasing wagon tracks and broken dreams alike, and somewhere in that darkness, a lone Apache warrior carried a dying white woman toward shelter, toward warmth, toward a future neither of them could have foreseen. Taza had been reading the storm for hours, watching the wind shift, listening to the silence where birds should have been. At 30 winters, he understood the desert's moods better than most. It had been his only companion since he left the reservation 2 seasons earlier. The cave he sought was hidden among red stone, known only to those who still honored the old ways. His grandfather had shown it to him when he was a boy, before soldiers came bearing promises wrapped in chains. He was nearly there when lightning revealed her, a pale shape against the blackened earth, still, lifeless. His instinct was to pass her by. White people had brought only suffering to his world. Let the desert take what it chose. But another flash illuminated her swollen belly, and something twisted in his chest. A memory rose unbidden. His sister, heavy with child, fleeing soldiers through a storm just like this one. She had not survived. Neither had the baby. Taza swung down from his paint mare, the animal standing calm despite the violence around them. The woman lay unconscious, breath shallow, skin burning beneath the cold rain. Mud streaked her hair and dress. Blood seeped from countless cuts on her hands and arms. When he lifted her, she moaned softly but did not wake. The child inside her moved against his chest. Alive. Fighting. The cave's entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for a man, but it opened into a chamber beyond. Taza carried her inside first, then returned for his supplies. His mare would find shelter on her own. She always did. Inside, the cave was dry and warm. Fire pits blackened by time, stones worn smooth by grinding hands, faded paintings whispering stories of hunts and ceremonies lined the walls. Taza laid the woman on dried grass and spread his blankets over her. Working by touch, he coaxed a fire from dry wood stored for emergencies like this. Soon, firelight danced across the stone, revealing how close to death she truly was. As warmth reached her skin, Clara Whitlow stirred. Pain dragged her back to the world, deep, rhythmic, centered in her belly. Her eyes flew open, a cave, firelight, ancient markings on stone, and the Apache. He crouched near the flames, watching her with eyes that gave nothing away. Fear crashed over her. Every horror story she had ever heard surged forward. Scalping, torture, women taken and never seen again. She tried to scramble backward, but her body refused to obey. She barely moved at all. Another contraction tore through her body, sharp and unforgiving, and a cry escaped her before she could stop it. The warrior spoke again in his own tongue, his voice low, steady, meant to calm. When panic still gripped her, he slowly raised his hands to show peace, then pointed to his own chest. "Taza," he said clearly. Clara Whitlow locked eyes with him, breathing hard through the pain. He was younger than she had first believed, no more than 30, strong features carved by wind and sun, sharp intelligence in his gaze. Scars crossed his arms and chest, the quiet record of a violent life. Yet as he tended the fire, his movements were careful, measured, never threatening. "Please," she gasped in English. "My baby." Understanding crossed his face at once. He had seen this before. Without hesitation, Taza reached into his gear and pulled out a leather pouch, spilling dried roots and leaves into his palm. He crushed them between his fingers, releasing a sharp, bitter scent, then mixed the herbs with water from his canteen in a small pot set over the flames. Clara watched him with fear and disbelief as he worked. This was not the savage she had been taught to expect. Where was the cruelty? The mindless violence? When the brew was ready, he brought it to her and motioned for her to drink. She hesitated, the thought of poison flashing through her mind, until another contraction made the choice for her. Whatever he gave her could not be worse than this pain. The liquid burned bitter on her tongue, but spread warmth through her body. The edge of the agony dulled slightly, though the contractions continued, relentless and commanding. Taza moved through the cave with quiet purpose, gathering what he needed. He tore clean strips from an old shirt, set them aside, then filled a larger pot with water to heat. Every motion spoke of experience. He had done this once before, helping his sister give birth while fleeing soldiers. That knowledge had not saved her, but it might save this woman. Clara found herself watching him closely. Everything about him contradicted the stories she had grown up with. Hands capable of killing moved with gentle precision. A face that should have held rage showed only focus and something close to compassion. "Why?" she asked between contractions. "Why help me?" Taza glanced at her. For a brief moment, sorrow darkened his eyes. Then he turned away without answering, returning to his preparations. Outside, the storm raged on. Wind screamed through the canyon like ancient voices calling out. Thunder shook the cave so hard, Clara wondered if the mountain itself might collapse. Another contraction struck, stronger than the last, and this time she screamed. Taza was at her side instantly, pressing a leather strap into her hand. She bit down hard, tasting salt and age in the worn hide. Time dissolved. Pain came and went in waves, broken only by brief moments of breath. The Apache never left her side, offering water when she could swallow, wiping sweat from her face with unexpected gentleness. As the contractions tightened, Taza began to sing. Low, rhythmic, a chant that wove through her pain, giving her something to hold on to besides fear. Clara had helped deliver her sister's children back in Ohio, but this was different. Each surge threatened to pull her under, into darkness. Only Taza's steady presence kept her grounded. During the worst of it, she clutched his hand, nails digging deep into his palm. He did not flinch. He did not pull away. His song rose and fell with her cries. The baby was coming too fast, far too early. Clara knew the danger. Babies born before their time often did not survive, especially without a doctor or trained midwife. But there was no stopping it now. "I can feel, oh God, I can feel..." Her words broke apart as her body took over, instinct drowning thought. Taza moved into position, sure and unshaken, ignoring all boundaries in the face of life and death. He had done this before, under circumstances just as desperate. Clara pushed with strength she did not know she had. The leather strap creaked between her teeth. Shadows danced wildly across the cave walls as firelight pulsed with her effort. Taza's chant grew louder, urgent, as if calling the child into the world. Then, with one final push that drained every ounce of her strength, the baby slid into Taza's hands. Silence. Terrible, crushing silence, broken only by the storm outside. The infant was small, too small, and terribly still. Taza worked fast, clearing the tiny mouth and nose, rubbing the fragile chest. Nothing. Clara reached out with shaking hands. "Give him to me, please." Taza placed the baby against her chest. A boy. She knew it without being told. Perfectly formed, dark hair plastered to his tiny head, features already echoing his father's. But his lips were blue, his body limp. "No," Clara whispered, then louder, desperate. "No. No, breathe, baby, please, breathe." Clara rubbed the tiny back and limp arms, willing life into the fragile body against her chest. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with sweat and grime as she pleaded with God, with fate, with anything listening to spare her child. Taza watched only a heartbeat longer. Then he gently took the infant from her arms. He cradled the baby with practiced care, tilted the small head, and breathed into the tiny mouth. Once, twice, 3 times, pausing between breaths. His chant never stopped, ancient words filling the cave with rhythm and intent. And then it happened. A faint cough. Another. A thin, fragile cry broke the silence. Clara sobbed as Taza placed the baby back against her chest, alive. The cry grew stronger, sharp with protest at the cold, bright world he'd been forced into. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. "Ash," she whispered, lifting her eyes to Taza in disbelief and wonder. "His name is Ash, born in the storm that should have taken us both." Taza nodded. He didn't need the words to understand. He helped her clean the child, wrapping him in soft cloth from his pack, then guided her hands, showing her how to bring the baby to her breast. Ash was weak, but stubborn. He latched on, determined, another small fighter in a cave full of survivors. Clara held her son for the first time and looked at the Apache warrior who had saved them both. Taza settled back on his heels, exhaustion etched into his posture, yet his eyes remained alert, ready. "Thank you," she said quietly, knowing it wasn't enough. "Taza, thank you." When he met her gaze, she saw something rare there, pain and peace bound together, loss standing beside redemption. Whatever memory had driven him to act, whatever spirit he was laying to rest, she would forever be grateful. Outside, the storm began to weaken. Rain still fell. Wind still cried through the canyon, but its fury was breaking. Inside the cave, warmed by fire and filled with the soft sounds of a nursing child, two strangers from opposite worlds forged a bond that rose above language, fear, and all the hatred they had been taught. The night was not yet done, and danger still waited beyond the cave mouth. But for this moment, there was life where there should have been death, hope where despair had ruled. As Clara drifted into exhausted sleep with Ash at her breast, and Taza kept silent watch, the ancient paintings on the cave walls seemed to flicker in the firelight, as if welcoming this new chapter into an old, unbroken story. Dawn crept in slowly, painting the stone in soft shades of rose and gold. Clara woke to find Ash still nestled against her, breathing steady and strong. The horrors of the night felt distant now, except for the unmistakably real figure of the Apache warrior seated near the cave entrance, his silhouette framed by morning light. Taza had not slept. All night he had fed the fire, checked mother and child, listened as the storm gradually lost its voice. Now he sat cross-legged, carving something with a small knife. Clara tried to sit up and winced as pain shot through her body. Every muscle ached, some wounds felt raw and torn. But she was alive. Ash was alive. That was all that mattered. "Good morning," she said softly, unsure if he would understand, yet needing to speak. Taza turned, studied her and the baby, then gave a small nod. He set aside his carving and returned to the fire, adding the last of the dry wood. Soon water warmed, and the familiar scent of medicinal herbs filled the cave. He handed her the tea, then strips of dried meat from his pack. Her stomach tightened with hunger. She couldn't remember when she'd last eaten. The jerky was tough and salty, but it was food. She chewed slowly, gratefully. Ash stirred, fussing, and she shifted him to nurse again. She had helped her sister many times, but doing this herself felt entirely different. Her body remembered what to do, even if her mind still reeled. As Ash fed, Taza spoke. His English was broken, rough, but clear enough. "Baby small," he said. "Need warm, need milk." He gestured toward her breast. "You speak English," Clara said, surprised. A hard smile crossed his face. "Mission school. Soldiers say Apache must learn white words." He touched the scar on his shoulder. "Learn with stick, with fist." Shame burned through her. She had heard of those schools. Children taken, haircut, language beaten out of them. She had never questioned it before. Now she did. "How long do we stay here?" she asked. Taza stepped to the cave entrance, studying the sky. Storm passed, but water high, mud thick. You weak, baby weak. He raised 3 fingers. 3 days, maybe 4. 3 days. Her heart sank. By then the wagon train would be long gone, if it had survived at all. They would not wait for one lost wagon, one widow, one child. She was alone now, completely dependent on a man who had every reason to hate her people. "My name is Clara," she said softly. He tried it. "Clara, wit, low." He frowned, then shook his head. "Hard name." She smiled faintly. "Clara is fine." He nodded, accepting it. "Close enough," Clara Whitlow said with a faint, tired smile. The day moved slowly. Taza left the cave several times, returning with fresh water gathered from rock pools and more wood to keep the fire alive. Once, he came back with a rabbit already skinned and cleaned. He roasted it over the flames, and though the meat was tough, it was rich. Clara ate with more hunger than she had felt in weeks, pausing only to feed Ash and rest. When she wasn't sleeping or nursing, she watched Taza work on the small object in his hands. The carving was taking shape now. A woman holding a child. The detail was astonishing. Each cut was clean and deliberate. "You're an artist," she said. He glanced up, confusion crossing his face. The word meant nothing to him. "It's beautiful," she tried again, gesturing to the carving. This time he understood. A brief smile touched his mouth before fading. "My sister," he said quietly. He mimed holding a baby, then slowly shook his head. Clara's chest tightened. "She lost her baby." "Soldiers come," he said. "We run. Baby come too soon." He paused. "Like yours." His hands stilled. No cave, no fire, only cold, only fear. "I'm so sorry," Clara whispered. In that moment she understood why he had saved her, why he had known exactly what to do. Taza returned to his carving without another word. As the day wore on, Clara became more aware of her body's needs beyond hunger and sleep. Childbirth left its own quiet damage. She was grateful when Taza, with unexpected tact, showed her a private place behind a curtain of stone and helped her clean with water warmed over the fire. He tore more strips from his spare shirt, fashioning rough bandages. His calm, practical manner made the ordeal easier to bear. This was survival. Nothing more. Ash proved stronger than she dared hope. Despite his early birth and small size, he nursed often and with determination. Clara found herself checking his breathing again and again, afraid he might simply stop. "He's strong," Taza said, noticing her fear. "Born in storm spirit in him." That evening, as shadows stretched long across the cave walls, Clara asked the question that had pressed on her all day. "Why did you leave the reservation?" Taza's jaw tightened. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke. "Wife sick, white man sickness. Medicine man say need white doctor. Agents say no doctor for Apache, only prayer." Bitterness roughened his voice. "She pray. Baby pray. Both die." After that, he said, he could not stay. He could not live behind walls, listen to church bells, or pretend the Apache way was finished. He gestured to the cave paintings. "This is true way, free way. Better die free than live in cage." Clara thought of her own cage, the rules of widowhood, the pressure to remarry, to be claimed and contained. She had fled west for freedom too, though her prison had worn a different shape. "I understand," she said softly. And she truly did. That night she slept more deeply, trusting Taza to stand watch. Ash woke her often to nurse, strong and demanding, and each time Taza was there, feeding the fire, heating water for tea. On the second day, the sun finally broke through thinning clouds. Taza traveled farther and returned with news. Water going down, mud still bad. Tomorrow, maybe. He brought back more than news. Scattered across the desert were the remains of old wagons. Not hers, he assured her quickly, but losses from long ago. He salvaged what he could: rope, a dented pot, a knife with a broken handle. Desert take, he said simply. Desert give back. Clara shuddered, imagining herself among those remains. Would anyone have known her name? Her story? Or would she have become nothing more than a warning whispered beside campfires? That afternoon, Taza showed her his plant medicines, through gestures and broken English. What eased pain, what stopped bleeding, what strengthened new mothers. Clara tried to memorize everything. Knowledge might be all she carried forward. Reality settled heavy in her chest. Her wagon was gone, her supplies gone, her money reduced to a few coins sewn into her corset. What future awaited a widow with a newborn and empty hands? You worry, Taza said. She laughed without humor. Everything I owned is gone. I have nothing left, nothing but ash. Have life, he corrected gently. Baby have life. Rest is nothing. Easy for him to say, she thought, then stopped herself. This man had lost everything, too. He had lost everything: his family, his place in the world, the freedom to live as his people always had. And yet, he endured. More than endured. He had saved 2 strangers who should have been his enemies. That evening, as Clara Whitlow nursed Ash by the firelight, she truly looked at Taza for the first time. Not as an Apache warrior, not as the monster wagon trail stories had warned her about, but as a man. He was striking in a way she had never learned to see before. Strong features shaped by hardship, sharp intelligence in his eyes, hands capable of great force, yet gentle when it mattered. Tell me about your sister, she said softly. What was her name? He hesitated, then answered. Asha. She laughed like water on stone, he continued quietly. Dance like wind in tall grass. Always say I too serious. A faint smile touched his lips. Say I need wife to make me smile. Did your wife make you smile? Clara asked. A shadow of warmth crossed his face. Yes, small, fierce, like mouse that scream at mountain cat. Then the warmth faded. Fever take voice first, then laughter, then life. They sat in silence after that, each wrapped in memories of those they had lost. Outside, coyotes lifted their voices to the coming night. Their calls echoed across the desert. Once the sound would have terrified her. Now it felt almost comforting. Life continuing, despite everything. What will you do? Clara asked at last. Taza shrugged. Go south. Maybe Mexico. Apache can be Apache there. He paused. Sometimes. And me? She asked quietly. What do I do? He studied her for a long moment. Town called Mateo Cruz, he said. 3 days walk, maybe 4 with baby. Trading post, good people, Mexican, Indian, some white. He hesitated, then added, I take you. Tears filled her eyes. After all her people had done to his, he was still willing to help her. Why are you so kind to me? She asked. You mother, he replied simply. Baby innocent. That enough. That night, Clara insisted that Taza sleep while she kept watch. He resisted at first, but exhaustion claimed him. She sat by the fire with Ash sleeping peacefully against her chest and watched over the man who had saved them both. In the shifting shadows along the cave walls, she imagined ancient stories unfolding. Hunters and gatherers, mothers and children, lives lived and lost over countless generations. She, Taza, and Ash were only the latest chapter. unlikely souls drawn together by storm and fate. Tomorrow they would leave this sanctuary. Tomorrow they would face the desert again, with all its dangers. But tonight, in this timeless place, they were simply three people who had found one another in the dark and chosen life over death, compassion over fear. Clara hummed softly to Ash, an old lullaby her mother had once sung. The melody blended with the whisper of wind outside and the crackle of fire, becoming something new, a song of survival, hope, and unexpected grace. The morning of the third day dawned clear and bright, carrying the promise of departure. Clara woke to find Taza already packing their few supplies, his movements quick and purposeful. The carving he had been working on lay finished beside her blanket, a woman riding into the wind, a child held close against her. "For Ash," he said when he saw her notice it, "so he know his story." Clara lifted the carving, her fingers tracing the smooth lines. Such careful work from hands so strong. "It's beautiful," she said. "Thank you." She was stronger now, though still sore and weary. The herbal teas had helped, and Ash continued to thrive despite his violent arrival into the world. She wrapped him carefully in cloth, fashioning a sling from torn blanket strips as she prepared to leave. Still, she hesitated. Leaving the cave felt like stepping out of safety itself. "How far did you say? To Mateo Cruz?" 3 days, maybe 4. Taza studied her with his dark, assessing eyes. "You ride." "I ride?" she echoed. He led her to the cave entrance, where his paint mare stood waiting, already loaded with supplies. "You too weak for walking?" he said. "Baby needs you strong." Clara had ridden before, but never bareback, and never on an Apache pony. The mare stood calm as Taza helped her mount, showing her how to balance with Ash secured against her chest. The warmth of the horse beneath her felt strangely reassuring. "And you?" she asked. "I walk," he said with a faint smile. "Apache walk long way, walk quiet, keep watch." Together they left the cave as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across a desert reshaped by the storm, where dry washes now gleamed with lingering water. Seasonal streams now cut through the land, clear water glinting in the sun. Cacti stood taller than before, some already pushing out pale blooms in answer to the rare rain. The air carried the sharp scent of wet earth and crushed sage. Taza guided them along routes Clara Whitlow would never have noticed. Paths so old they barely existed, marked only by subtle signs his people had followed for generations. He moved without sound, stopping often to study the horizon or crouch to read tracks pressed into drying mud. "Soldiers," he said once, pointing to hoofprints. "Yesterday, going east." Clara's pulse jumped. Soldiers meant safety to her kind, but danger to his. "Maybe I should go toward them," she said carefully. Taza shook his head, firm. "Soldiers not always help white woman. Alone, with baby." He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. Clara had heard enough stories, things done far from towns, far from rules, far from witnesses. She had believed them rare. Now she wasn't so sure. They rested through the worst heat of the day beneath a red rock overhang. Taza rationed water with care, showing her how to dampen Ash's lips without wasting a drop. The baby rested easily in his sling, soothed by the horse's steady movement and the rhythm of Clara's heart. "Tell me about your husband," Taza said suddenly. The question surprised her, and her own willingness to answer. "Eli Boone was a good man," she said. "A carpenter." She hesitated, then added softly, "He had gentle hands, like yours." Color rose to her cheeks, but she continued. He died building a church. A beam slipped. They said it was instant, a good death. Taza nodded. No suffering. I suppose, Clara said, though any death that leaves a wife and unborn child feels cruel to me. Death is death, he replied. Not cruel, not kind, just is. He paused. But timing, yes, timing can be cruel. As the day cooled, they traveled farther than Clara expected. Her body ached from riding, muscles protesting the strain, but she kept silent. Taza had already given too much. She would not add to his burden. That evening they made camp near a spring hidden among tall stone walls. Taza had known it was there without hesitation, another quiet inheritance of his people. He caught lizards with his bare hands, roasting them over a small fire that sent almost no smoke into the air. Tomorrow hard, he warned as they ate. Open ground, army trail, trading road, dangerous for Apache. Then don't come, Clara said without thinking. You've done enough. Just tell me the way. The look he gave her stopped the words cold. I say I take you, he said quietly. I take you. That night, Ash grew restless, crying with a sharpness that made Clara's chest tighten. Fear crept in. Was he ill? Was her milk failing him? She walked him in slow circles, humming and rocking, but nothing calmed him. At last, Taza stepped forward and gently took the baby from her weary arms. He held Ash against his chest and began to sing, not the healing chant from the cave, but something softer. A lullaby. The words meant nothing to Clara, but the melody felt ancient and deep, as if carried forward through countless generations. Ash stilled. One tiny hand curled into the fabric of Taza's shirt. Within moments, he slept. How did you do that? Clara whispered. Babies know truth, Taza said simply, returning Ash to her. Know when song come from heart. By morning, signs of civilization began to appear. Wagon ruts pressed into the dirt, broken bottles catching the sun, old fire rings scattered across the land. Taza grew more cautious. Often he left Clara hidden while he moved ahead to scout. Why do you fear the soldiers so much? She asked during one of those waits. The war's over, isn't it? Taza's face hardened. Apache always at war, not our choice. If soldiers see Apache alone, he continued, they shoot. Say we raiding. Say we run from reservation. He touched his chest. I run. They write that. But if I explained, Clara began. You think they listen? He interrupted quietly. White woman with Apache, they think I steal you, hurt you. His voice turned bitter. Then they rescue you. And you? She asked, already knowing. They hang me from tree. Sickness rolled through her. She had heard such stories, had dismissed them as harsh necessities of the frontier. Now she looked at the man who had saved her life, who had sung her child to sleep, and she saw what taming truly meant. By midday, they reached the trading road, a wide, dusty track marked with fresh wheel ruts, cutting through the land like a scar. Taza studied the trading road for a long moment, weighing the risks. Then he made a choice that surprised Clara Whitlow. We follow road now, he said. More danger for me. Faster for you. Ash need real shelter soon. He fashioned a lead rope and placed it in Clara's hands, arranging it so it appeared she controlled the horse, while he walked slightly behind, like a hired guide rather than a protector. The arrangement scraped at her sense of fairness. A proud warrior forced into a role of submission, but she understood why it had to be done. They crossed paths with other travelers twice that afternoon. The first was a Mexican family struggling with a broken wagon wheel. Their worry was so complete they barely spared Taza a glance. Clara wished she could help, but she had nothing to offer beyond sympathy and a quiet prayer. The second meeting was far more dangerous. 3 white men rode up, armed and careless, their posture loose with whiskey. They reined in when they saw Clara, took in her worn clothes, the baby at her chest, then their eyes slid to the Apache walking behind her. "Well now," the leader drawled, a crooked grin spreading across his face. "What do we have here?" Clara's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm heading to the Mateo Cruz trading post." "And this one?" another asked, nodding toward Taza. "My guide," she said firmly, forcing authority into her tone. "Hired near Fort Grant. My husband is meeting me in town." The lie came easily. Lies were sometimes as necessary as breath. The men exchanged looks. The leader nudged his horse closer, eyes roaming too freely. "Funny thing," he said. "Woman like you traveling alone." Before Clara could respond, Taza shifted just enough. Silent, watchful, dangerous in a way only another predator could sense. It was subtle, but the men felt it. The leader spat in the dust. "Ain't worth the trouble," he muttered. With a final leer, they rode on, leaving Clara trembling in their wake. They didn't speak until the dust settled. Too many eyes. Too many questions. As evening fell, they made camp in a sheltered hollow a mile from the trading post, close enough to see adobe buildings and corrals, far enough to avoid notice. Their last night together. The realization struck Clara harder than she expected. As they shared their final meal, the last of Taza's dried meat and roots he'd dug from the earth, she tried to commit everything to memory. The way firelight shaped his face. The ease with which he tended Ash, as naturally as if the child were his own. The silence between them that no longer felt empty. "What will you tell them?" Taza asked quietly. She had thought about it all day. "Mostly the truth. Separated from my wagon train in the storm, found shelter. A kind person helped me deliver my baby." She met his eyes. "I won't mention you, if that's what you want." "Better you don't," he said. After a pause, he spoke again. "At trading post, man named Mateo Cruz. Old, beard white like snow. His woman, Isela, Tohono o Odom. They understand things." He hesitated. "If you need help, real help, tell them Shadow Walker sent you." "Shadow Walker?" Clara echoed. "Name they know me by," he said. "Long story." A faint smile touched his mouth. "They help you, maybe work, place to stay." Tears threatened. After tomorrow, she would likely never see him again. This man who had saved her life, who had shattered everything she had believed about his people. He would fade back into the desert that shaped him. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "No thanks needed," Taza replied. "You live. Ash live. Enough." But it wasn't enough. Not for Clara. She reached across the fire and took his hand. He stiffened, unused to such closeness. Then slowly, he relaxed. "You gave me more than life," she said. "You gave me hope. You showed me kindness when you had every reason for hate. I'll never forget that. Never." He squeezed her hand once, gently, then let go. "You show me something too," he said. "Not all white same. Some have good heart." He looked at Ash, sleeping peacefully between them. "Maybe his world different," he murmured. "Maybe Apache and white learned to see each other true." They talked long into the night after that, sharing fragments of childhood, memories shaped by different worlds, bound now by the same fire. They spoke of the dreams they had carried before the world hardened around them, of hopes that still lingered, bruised but unbroken. Clara Whitlow learned that Taza loved working with wood, shaping life from something raw. That once, before war and loss, he had thought of becoming a medicine man. He learned that she could read and write, that she had taught school before marrying Eli Boone, that she dreamed of building a school of her own someday, somewhere in California, where the land was kinder and the past felt farther away. When Ash stirred for his night feeding, Taza added more wood to the fire, then moved a short distance off, granting privacy while staying close enough to guard. Clara nursed her son beneath a sky heavy with stars, feeling both impossibly small and part of something ancient and endless. Tomorrow would bring hard choices. She would arrive at a rough trading post with no money, no kin, nothing but the clothes she wore and a newborn in her arms. But tonight she had this: the fire's warmth, the steady breath of her child, and the quiet presence of an unlikely protector who had restored her belief in human goodness. The desert wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the scent of creosote and rain-washed earth. Somewhere in the darkness, a nightbird cried. Clara closed her eyes, committing every sound to memory. This, she realized, was what Taza had truly given her. Not just survival, but a wider way of seeing the world. Wilder. Truer. Tomorrow they would part. But tonight, beneath the same stars that had witnessed their meeting in the storm, they were simply three souls bound by grace. Proof that kindness could bloom even in the harshest ground. Dawn arrived too soon, brushing the desert in soft pinks and golds that mocked the weight in Clara's chest. She had barely slept, knowing this would be their last morning together. Ash nursed contentedly, unaware that their small, fragile family was about to be torn apart. Taza had risen before first light. He refilled her water skin, wrapped the remaining food in cloth, and fashioned a stronger sling for Ash from his own shirt. Every motion spoke of care, of giving her the best chance he could. "Road to trading post clear," he said, handing her the mare's lead rope. "You walk slow, like tired traveler. Story simple, lost in storm, found shelter. Baby came." He met her eyes. "Truth best, when possible." Clara nodded, throat tight. She had practiced the story in her mind, carefully cutting out one vital truth. It felt like betrayal, erasing Taza from their survival. But she understood why it had to be done. "The horse is yours now," he said, lifting a hand to stop her protest. "Ash need mother strong, mother need horse." "And you?" she asked. "Apache walk," he replied, with the faint smile she had grown to treasure. "Walk far, walk fast. Mexico before full moon." They broke camp in silence, erasing all signs of their stay with practiced ease. As Clara settled Ash into the sling and prepared to mount the mare, Taza drew something from his pack, a small leather pouch on a cord. "Medicine bundle," he said, tying it carefully to the sling so it rested against Ash's body. "Protection. For journey. For life." Tears burned in her eyes. "Taza, Time," he said gently but firmly. "Sun rising. Trading post wake soon. Better arrive early. People generous with breakfast." He helped her onto the mare, his hands steady. For a heartbeat, they stood close enough for her to see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, to breathe in the scent of sage and wood smoke clinging to him. Then he stepped back. "Remember," he said, "Mateo Cruz, Whitebeard, his woman, Isela. Tell them Shadow Walker sent you." "I will," Clara whispered. They held each other's gaze a final moment, saying everything words could not. Then Taza turned away and vanished into the desert scrub, moving with that fluid grace that made him seem less a man than a living part of the land itself. One moment Taza was there. The next, only Clara's memory of him remained. She almost called out, almost said something, anything, that might have changed how this ended. But Ash began to stir, a small sound of hunger and discomfort, and the sun was already climbing higher. The trading post waited, heavy with promise and uncertainty. With a tight ache in her chest, Clara Whitlow clicked her tongue to the mare and turned toward the dusty road. The final mile felt endless, and yet far too short. Part of her wanted to urge the horse into a run, to reach safety, shelter, help for Ash as quickly as possible. Another part wanted to turn back, to vanish into the desert where life had been stripped down to its bare truths, where survival ruled and kindness could grow even between enemies. The Mateo Cruz trading post spread out beside a narrow creek, a loose gathering of adobe buildings that had grown over time rather than been planned. Corrals held horses and mules. Wagons in various stages of repair lined one side. Smoke drifted from several chimneys, and the air carried voices, English, Spanish, and tongues Clara couldn't place. She entered slowly, just as Taza had instructed, letting the mare pick her way past curious dogs and wandering chickens. The post was waking up. A Mexican woman hung laundry between two posts. Men loaded freight into wagons. Children darted between buildings, laughing. Heads turned as Clara approached. A white woman alone with a baby was rare enough to draw attention. She lifted her chin, forcing confidence she didn't feel. "Ma'am?" A young man stepped forward, concern plain on his face. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Clara dismounted carefully, legs unsteady after the long ride. "I need to speak with Mr. Cruz. Is he here?" "I'll get him," the young man said, glancing at her torn dress and exhausted appearance. "You can wait in the shade. Water barrels are fresh." Grateful, Clara led the mare beneath a ramada. She drank deeply from the water, then dampened a cloth to wipe Ash's face. Her son looked up at her with dark, searching eyes, far too aware for someone so new to the world. "Well now," a voice said behind her. "What have we got here?" Clara turned to see an elderly man with a beard white as snow, just as Taza had described. His sharp blue eyes missed nothing. "Mr. Cruz?" she asked. "That's me," he replied. "And you look like you've got a tale to tell. Come inside, out of the heat. Isela, we've got company." Inside the main building, the air was cool and dim, scented with leather, spices, and fresh coffee. Clara sank into a chair as Mateo Cruz poured water from a clay pitcher. A woman emerged from the back room, clearly indigenous, though Clara couldn't have named the tribe. Her black hair was streaked with silver, her face strong and unreadable, as if shaped by the desert itself. This was Isela. "Storm," Clara said without preamble, too tired for politeness. "I was separated from my wagon train in the storm, found shelter, gave birth, made my way here." She told the story plainly, just as Taza had advised, leaving out only one truth. When she finished, Mateo and Isela exchanged a long look. "This shelter," Isela said slowly, "in the red rock caves with old paintings?" Clara's heart skipped. "Yes." Another glance passed between them. Isela stepped closer, studying Ash where he rested in the sling. Her fingers brushed the small leather pouch tied near his chest. Her eyes widened just slightly. "Apache work," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Clara felt caught between silence and honesty. These people had shown kindness, but would it hold? "Shadow Walker sent me," she said at last, the words spilling out. "He saved us, delivered my baby, brought us here." The change in the room was instant. Mateo's weathered face broke into a grin, and Isela smiled, transforming her stern features into something warm and radiant. "That rascal," Mateo chuckled. "Shadow Walker. Should have known. Man's got a soft spot for folks in trouble." "You know him?" Clara asked, relief flooding her legs. "Know him?" Mateo laughed. Ma'am, pardon my language, but that man saved more lives than anyone I know. Apache, Mexican, even white folks, when they're worth saving." Clara exhaled for what felt like the first time since the storm. "He's got his own code," Isola said quietly, her hands already moving with practiced certainty. "And it's better than most churchmen I've known." She examined Clara Whitlow with the calm authority of someone long used to tending broken bodies. "You need rest, real food, a bath, and the baby needs checking too." She turned to her husband. "The back room, the quiet one." "Now, Isela," Mateo Cruz began. "The back room," she repeated, firm as iron. Then she looked back at Clara. "You stay as long as you need. Taza's friends are our friends." The next hour passed in a haze of kindness. Isola helped Clara bathe, clucking softly over bruises and scrapes, applying salves that smelled of pine and desert herbs. Clean clothes appeared, simple, sturdy garments clearly kept for travelers in need. Ash was examined from head to toe, declared healthy despite his early arrival, and given his first proper bath in warm water. Food followed. Beans, rice, tortillas, goat milk for Clara to strengthen her own supply. Tea that tasted almost exactly like what Taza had brewed in the cave. Clara ate as if she hadn't known hunger had a bottom. Around her, women talked as they worked. "Shadowwalker brought my nephew out of the desert," one Mexican woman said. "Soldiers shot him, left him for dead." "He found him," another added. "Nursed him back, brought him home, warned our village about raiders." "Wouldn't take payment," a third said. "Just told us to help the next person who needed it." Story after story surfaced, painting the picture of a man who moved between worlds, offering help where he could, asking nothing in return except that kindness be carried forward. Clara held Ash and listened, her chest tight with pride and sorrow in equal measure. That evening, Mateo Cruz found her sitting in the courtyard, watching the sun set the desert ablaze with reds and golds. "You're thinking about him," the old man said, lowering himself beside her. "Is it that obvious?" she asked softly. "A woman's got a certain look," he replied, packing his pipe with slow care. "Especially when she's thinking about a man who's gone." He lit the pipe, puffed once. "I've known Shadowwalker 10 years. Never seen him take to anyone the way he must have taken to you." "How do you know?" Clara asked. Mateo nodded toward the small leather pouch tied to Ash's sling. "That's not just protection, that's a claim." Her hand went to it instinctively. "Apache way of saying that child is under his protection," Mateo continued. "For life. A man doesn't do that lightly." "Will I see him again?" she asked. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not. Desert's big, and Shadowwalker goes where the wind sends him." He puffed again, thoughtful. "But a man who makes a claim like that? I wouldn't bet against it." In the days that followed, Clara settled into the rhythm of the trading post. Isola found her work helping in the store, keeping accounts, writing letters for those who couldn't read or write. The pay was modest, but it came with room, board, and safety for Ash. She met other women who had carved lives from the frontier. Mexican wives who'd followed soldiers west, indigenous women married to traders, and a few white women who'd chosen freedom over the tight rules of Eastern society. They welcomed her with practical kindness, shared advice on raising children in hard country, on stretching money, on staying strong when the world pressed in. Ash thrived, passed from arm to arm, sung to in many languages, breathing in the wildness of the desert as if it belonged to him. The medicine bundle never left his side. More than once, Clara noticed Isola, or one of the indigenous women, touch it with quiet reverence. "That boy's got powerful protection," Isola said one evening. "Not just Apache medicine, love medicine, strongest kind there is." News filtered in from the outside world. Clara's wagon train had survived the storm, but not without loss. 3 wagons destroyed, 8 people dead. They had searched for her. Reed Coulter had even sent riders back. But the storm had erased everything. She was listed among the dead. "Maybe that's for the best," Clara said quietly to Mateo one night. "Clara Whitlow died in that storm." "And whoever you are now," he replied, "is someone new." "The desert," he said, "had a way of doing that." The desert stripped a person down to bare bone, then left them to decide who they would become again. Clara Whitlow thought often of Taza, especially in the quiet hours when Ash slept, and the desert wind whispered through the adobe walls. Where was he now? Had he crossed safely into Mexico? Did he ever think of the woman and child he had pulled back from death? Sometimes she felt him, like a presence just beyond sight. Once, while riding out with Isola to gather herbs, Clara saw a figure standing on a distant ridge. Tall, still, watching. Her heart leapt. She blinked, looked again. Only sky remained. "Shadow Walker watches his own," Isola said softly. And Clara knew she had seen him too. A month passed, then another. Clara found her place within the small, rough-edged community of the trading post. She began teaching letters to the children, scratching words in charcoal on flat stones when paper was too precious to waste. She learned to make tortillas by feel, to judge leather with her hands, to read the sky for weather before it arrived. Ash grew stronger every day. A serious child, watchful, rarely crying except when hunger demanded it. The women said he carried an old soul, born knowing, shaped by the struggle of his arrival. Sometimes Clara saw Taza in him, the same steady gaze, the same quiet strength. One evening, as violet shadows stretched across the desert, a trader arrived from the south. Among his goods was a small wooden box, wrapped carefully in cloth. "Strangest thing," the trader said to Mateo Cruz. "An Apache man stopped me 3 days out. Looked dangerous but spoke gentle. Asked me to bring this here. Said you'd know who it was for." Clara's hands trembled as she opened the box. Inside, wrapped in soft deerskin, lay a carved wooden horse, perfect in every detail. A woman sat astride it, a baby in her arms, her face turned forward, not back toward danger, but toward whatever waited ahead. There was no note. Taza could not write. Clara knew that, but the message was carved into every careful line. "Move forward. Be strong. You are not forgotten." "He's alive," Clara whispered. "Of course he is," Mateo said gruffly. "Takes more than soldiers and desert to stop Shadow Walker. He'll come back when the time's right." Men like that always did. Clara held Ash close, the carving in one hand, the medicine bundle resting against his son's chest in the other. Outside, the first stars appeared. Those same stars that had watched over a cave during the storm. That now looked down on a lone Apache somewhere in the vast desert. "We'll be here," she whispered. She wasn't sure if she spoke to Mateo, to Ash, or to the wind itself. "When he comes back, we'll be here." The desert carried her words away into the night, and Clara chose to believe they would reach the right ears, crossing whatever distance lay between 2 hearts that had recognized each other in the storm, and would not forget. 3 months passed. The routine of the trading post became Clara's anchor. She kept Mateo's books, taught children their letters, helped Isola gather herbs. Ash grew round and healthy, his dark eyes following everything with an intensity that made old women murmur about spirit-touched children. On one particular morning, the heat pressed down early and heavy. Clara was sorting a shipment of cloth when Thomas Rivas burst through the door, breathless. "Soldiers," he said. "A lot of them." The trading post shifted into controlled motion. Army patrols were not unusual, but they always brought risk. Goods were hidden, stories prepared, faces arranged into calm industry. Clara's chest tightened. She had grown comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Her story was well known now, believed by most. But soldiers asked sharper questions, looked harder. "Clara," Isilla said quietly at her side, "take Ash to the back. Help with the washing. Stay busy. Stay quiet." Clara didn't hesitate. She lifted Ash from his basket and moved to the courtyard, where women were already bent over wash basins, hands working, voices low, while boots and spurs approached from the road outside. She scrubbed harder than necessary, pouring her worry into the rough rhythm of cloth against wood. Through the archway, the sounds reached her clearly. The jingle of spurs, leather creaking, boots striking packed earth, voices sharp with authority. This was no ordinary patrol. Clara Whitlow kept her head down, eyes fixed on the wash basin, hands moving steadily, but her ears strained for meaning. "We're tracking Apache raiders," a soldier's voice carried across the courtyard. "Hit a supply wagon 2 days south, looking for a warrior known as Shadow Walker." Clara's hands froze in the sudsy water. Beside her, Elena Cruz, Isilla's cousin, let out a soft, distressed sound. "Shadow Walker ain't no raider." Mateo Cruz's voice followed, low and solid. "I've known him for years. Man's got his own code." "That so?" the soldier replied, doubt thick in his tone. "Well, this Apache killed 2 men, took horses and supplies. Witness saw him plain as day, tall fellow, scar on his shoulder, rides a paint mare." Clara's stomach dropped. The description was too precise to deny. But Taza killing without cause? Stealing? It clashed violently with everything she knew of him. "When did this happen?" Mateo asked. 3 days back, near Sulphur Springs. We've been tracking him since. Trail leads this way." "You won't find him here," Mateo said firmly. "Shadow Walker goes where he pleases." The conversation drifted on, but Clara heard no more. Her thoughts spiraled. Had Taza been forced to defend himself? Was he injured? Or had desperation driven him into something she could not yet understand? The soldiers stayed more than an hour, questioning, searching the stables and storerooms. Clara remained in the courtyard. Ash settled against her hip, forcing calm into her posture as uniforms passed too close. A young lieutenant paused beside her. "You're the widow, aren't you?" he said. "Lost in that big storm a few months back." "Yes, sir," Clara replied evenly. "Lucky you found shelter." His gaze lingered on Ash, on the baby's dark hair, dark eyes. "Child looks healthy, all things considered." "God was merciful," Clara said simply. The lieutenant studied her a moment longer, suspicion heavy in his stare, then moved on. Clara felt it like a weight pressing against her ribs. How many white women on the frontier bore children with such coloring? How many survived storms meant to kill? At last, the soldiers rode out, heading east toward the mountains. The trading post released a collective breath. Voices returned. Work resumed. But Clara noticed the worried glances, the lowered tones. That evening, Mateo motioned her aside. "There's something you should know," he said quietly, "about what those soldiers said." Clara braced herself. "You think Taza, Shadow Walker, really did those things?" "No," Mateo answered without hesitation. Then he sighed. "But I think I know what happened. Sulphur Springs sits close to the reservation. Sometimes Apache try to break out, try to go home. Desperation makes men dangerous." "You think the soldiers lied?" "I think dead men don't tell their side of the story," Mateo said evenly. "And I think if Shadow Walker killed someone, he had a powerful reason." He paused, choosing his words with care. "The trouble is, guilt or not, those soldiers won't stop hunting. And Shadow Walker, he's got things he cares about now. Clara understood instantly. You think he might come here? I think a man who carves horses for a woman, Matteo said, who places his protection on a child, that man doesn't disappear forever. He shrugged lightly. And if he's in trouble, if he's running, I'm just saying you should be careful. Clara nodded, her arms tightening around Ash. Outside, the desert darkened, wide, silent, and full of unseen movement. Be watchful. Be ready. Have a plan. Sleep would not come to Clara Whitlow that night. She lay awake in her small room, Ash tucked warm against her side, staring up at the low ceiling. Every sound set her nerves on edge. A creak of wood, a distant step, a breath that wasn't her own. But dawn arrived quietly, and nothing happened. One day passed, then another, then a third. Word spread that the territory troopers had moved on, chasing bad trails into the mountains. The trading post loosened back into its usual rhythm, and Clara began to think that maybe Matteo Cruz had been wrong. Maybe Taza had too much sense to come anywhere near a place where soldiers asked questions. She was wrong. It was near sunset on the fourth day. The sky burned with deep oranges and bruised purples. Clara had taken Ash behind the buildings to catch the evening breeze, sitting on a bench Isola had placed there for mothers and tired souls. Ash fussed in her arms, fighting sleep the way he always did at this hour. Clara hummed softly, her mother's lullaby blending with the Apache chant she'd learned in the cave. Then a shadow peeled itself away from the deeper darkness between the buildings. Clara's breath caught. He was thinner than before, worn down by travel. New lines cut deep around his eyes. Dark stains marked his shirt. Dust, maybe, or blood. But there was no mistaking Taza. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, even as her heart leapt at the sight of him. "Had to come," he said. His voice was rough, unused. Had to see. His gaze locked onto Ash, taking in how much the child had grown in 3 short months. Clara noticed his hands tremble before he clenched them together. "The soldiers were here," she said urgently. "They're looking for you." "I know what they said." A bitter smile touched his mouth. "Dead men tell loud stories." "What happened?" she asked. Taza scanned the shadows, instinct sharp even through exhaustion. "Reservation police. Caught a family trying to leave. Man, woman, 2 children. His jaw tightened. "Like my sister." Clara didn't need him to explain further. She could see it clearly enough. "They were hurting them," she said softly. He nodded once. The woman screamed. "How many?" Clara asked. 2, he answered. "Clean deaths. The family got away." He met her eyes. "Not sorry. Would do it again." Clara believed him. More than that, she understood. How many times could a man watch his people broken before something inside him shattered? "You can't stay here," she said urgently. "They'll come back." "They always do," he replied. "I know." He hesitated, searching for words. "Just needed to see you safe. See Ash strong. Know it mattered." "It did," Clara said fiercely. "We're alive because of you. Ash is thriving. I have work, a place. You gave us that." Slowly, carefully, Taza reached out, as if afraid she might vanish. His fingers brushed Ash's dark hair. The baby turned toward him, eyes sharpening with that uncanny focus. Then Ash smiled. His first true smile, wide and bright, gums showing, his whole face lighting up. Taza made a sound that hovered between a laugh and a sob. "He knows me." "Of course he does," Clara whispered. "I tell him stories every night, about the warrior who brought him into the world, About the storm, the cave, the songs you sang." "Dangerous stories," Taza said quietly. "True ones," she answered. They stood there as darkness gathered, close enough to touch but holding back, both aware that every heartbeat increased the danger. At last, Taza reached beneath his shirt and drew out a small object, a piece of turquoise, smoothed by years of wear, a hole drilled through it for a leather cord. "For Ash," he said, "when he's older. Protection stone. My father gave it to me. His father to him." He placed it gently in Clara's palm, his fingers lingering for just a moment, long enough to say everything words could not. Clara Whitlow accepted the turquoise with reverence, fully grasping the weight of the gift. This was more than protection. It was lineage, memory, a claim that reached beyond blood and time. "Shadowwalker." The harsh whisper came from the corner of the yard. A young Apache man Clara did not recognize motioned urgently. "Rider's coming. Must go. Now." Taza nodded, but did not move right away. Instead, he looked at Clara with an intensity that weakened her knees. "I go to Mexico now," he said quietly. "For real this time. But—" he hesitated, struggling for words. "When safe. When soldiers forget." His eyes held hers. "I come back. Find you. Find Ash. We'll be here," Clara said without hesitation. "And if we're not, Mateo Cruz will know where we went. We won't disappear." "Tara," he said, her name on his lips like a vow. "You teach Ash about his people, both peoples. Make him proud of Apache blood." "I swear it," she said. The young Apache hissed another warning. Taza stepped back, but Clara caught his hand. "Wait." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the carved wooden horse. She had carried it every day since the trader delivered it. "Take this," she said, "so you remember us too." He closed his fingers around the carving, his hand enveloping hers for a single, aching moment. Then he was gone, slipping into shadow with his companion, dissolving into the desert as if he had never been there at all. Clara stood alone in the dusty yard, ash against her chest, turquoise warm in her palm. Isola found her minutes later, tears streaming freely down Clara's face. "Come inside, child," the older woman said gently. "Come inside before someone sees." The riders the Apache scout had spotted turned out to be traders, not soldiers, but the warning had been wise. In the days that followed, army patrols increased, crisscrossing the territory with grim purpose. Wanted posters appeared. Reward offered for the capture of Shadowwalker. Dead or alive. Clara buried herself in work, forcing her hands to stay busy so her mind would not follow Taza across the desert. Running, hunted, alone. She sewed the turquoise into a small leather pouch, ready for the day Ash would be old enough to wear it. At night, she told her son stories, of his birth, of courage and mercy, of two peoples who might one day see each other as human instead of enemies. A week after Taza's visit, Mateo Cruz brought news. "The border's sealed tight," he said. "Armies watching every crossing." Clara's heart dropped. "He's trapped." "Shadowwalker?" Mateo almost smiled. "That Apache knows paths no white man will find for another 100 years. He'll make it. Might take time. Might take the long way. But he'll make it." She clung to that belief. She had to believe that somewhere beneath the endless desert sky, Taza was finding his way to safety, carrying the carved horse and the memory of Ash's first smile. Life at the trading post moved forward. Clara saved every penny she could, thinking of the future. California still called to her, the ocean she had never seen, the promise of new beginnings. But not yet. Not until she was certain Taza would know where to find them. Ash grew stronger by the day. Alert, strikingly beautiful. People speculated freely about his father. Some guessed Mexican. Others whispered of Italian blood or a trader's indiscretion. Clara let them believe whatever they wished. The truth was too precious, too dangerous. 3 months after Taza's visit, word came through the trader network. Shadow Walker had been seen in Sonora, helping a village drive off bandits, alive, free, beyond the reach of American law. That night, Clara wept with relief, holding her son close beneath a sky filled with stars that remembered everything. Clara Whitlow held Ash close, her arms wrapped around him as if the act itself could protect the future. Somewhere beyond the border, Taza was safe. For now. When the hunt faded. When the stories lost their heat. When the soldiers turned their attention elsewhere, he would keep his promise. She knew it with the same certainty she knew the sun would rise. Until then, she would build a life. She would raise Ash to be proud of both bloodlines that ran through him. She would save what little money she could, make careful plans, keep hope breathing. And every evening at sunset, she would step outside and face south, sending her thoughts across the open desert to wherever Taza might be, letting him know they were alive. They were waiting. They had not forgotten. The desert wind would carry the message. She believed that. After all, it had brought them together in a storm. Surely it could bridge the distance now, holding them together until the day she carried in her heart. The day Shadow Walker would rise out of the desert again and come home to claim what was his. The day of leaving had been approaching for months, slow and inevitable, like the turn of seasons. Clara had saved enough for passage to Tucson, where a teaching position waited. Isola's cousin ran a small school there, overwhelmed by the flood of families moving into the growing town. It was a chance at something real, something stable, a future for Ash. Now, standing in the pre-dawn darkness outside the trading post, Clara felt the ache of another farewell. Mateo Cruz and Isela had risen early to see them off, loading the wagon with supplies and quiet gifts from the community that had become her family. "Remember what I told you," Isela said, pressing a wrapped bundle into Clara's hands. "Elena Cruz will meet you at the stage stop. She's expecting you." "I'll never be able to repay your kindness," Clara said, her voice thick. Mateo waved it away. "You brought life back into this place, taught our children their letters, helped keep our books straight. We're the ones who owe you." Ash, now a sturdy 9-month-old, reached for Isela from Clara's hip. The older woman took him, holding him close one last time. "Grow strong, little warrior," she whispered. "Remember where you were born. Remember who loved you first." As she handed Ash back, Clara noticed movement at the edge of the buildings. For one breathless instant, hope flared. But no, it was only Thomas Rivas, come to drive the wagon to the stage depot. The disappointment cut deep. She had known Taza couldn't come, wouldn't risk exposing himself when she was leaving anyway. Still, some foolish part of her had hoped. "He knows," Mateo said quietly, reading her thoughts with unsettling accuracy. "Word travels on the desert wind. He knows where you're going, and why." Clara nodded, unable to trust her voice. She climbed onto the wagon seat, settling Ash securely beside her. As Thomas clicked to the horses and they rolled away from the trading post, she turned for one last look. The adobe buildings were already fading into shadow against the brightening sky, yet they held memories of healing, of kindness, of learning how to live again. The ride to the stage depot was quiet. Ash slept against her shoulder. As they reached the main road, Thomas suddenly pulled the horses to a halt. "What is it?" Clara asked, alarm tightening her chest. Thomas pointed toward a low rise about 100 yards off. A lone figure stood there. Even at that distance, even in the dim light. Clara knew. Taza sat motionless on a dark horse, watching. Too far away to see his face. Yet she felt the weight of his gaze as surely as if he stood beside her. Slowly, she raised her hand. A greeting and a farewell, bound into one. For a long moment, he did not move. Then he lifted his hand to his chest and held it there, firm and unmistakable. The meaning was clear. You are held here. You will remain here. Clara pressed her own hand to her chest, returning the gesture. Ash stirred and turned his head in the same direction, as if he too sensed the man who had carried him into the world. Then Taza turned his horse, rode up the rise, and vanished, gone like smoke lifted by the wind. We go now? Tomas Rivas asked gently. Yes, Clara said, finding her voice at last. We go now. The stage depot was already alive with motion despite the early hour. Clara had never traveled by public stage before, and the reality was daunting. A crowded coach, rutted roads, long days with Ash to tend. But she had endured worse. They both had. As she waited to board, a weathered Mexican man approached. His eyes flicked around before settling on her. Senora Whitlow? He asked quietly. Clara stiffened. Yes. Without another word, he pressed something into her hand. From a friend, he said. He told me to give you this for the journey. It was a soft leather pouch, worn smooth with use. Inside lay more money than Clara had ever held at once, enough to carry them through travel and the first uncertain months ahead. I can't, she began. But the man was already gone, swallowed by the crowd as completely as Taza himself might have vanished. Clara clutched the pouch, tears burning her eyes. Even from hiding, even at a distance, Taza was still providing for them. She tucked the money away carefully, already planning. Education for Ash, stability, a future built with care. The stage journey proved every bit as miserable as she had feared. Ash, usually calm, grew restless with confinement and unfamiliar faces pressing close. Clara murmured stories to him, sang softly when the other passengers slept, and counted the miles carrying them farther from everything known. On the second day, they stopped at a way station to change horses. Clara walked Ash near the corrals, trying to soothe him, when she noticed a young Apache woman watching them. Their eyes met. The woman approached slowly. Your boy, she said in careful English. He has the look of my people. Clara's pulse jumped, but she kept her tone even. His father had some Mexican blood, I believe. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled faintly. Yes, I see. She reached into her bag and drew out a small doll made of corn husks. For the child, for protection on journeys. Before Clara could respond, the woman placed the doll in Ash's eager hands and walked away. Ash began babbling happily to his new treasure, content for the first time in hours. It happened twice more along the route, Apache people appearing as if summoned by the wind, offering help or small gifts, then fading away before questions could be asked. Clara understood then. Word had spread. Taza's people were watching over them, an invisible network of protection guiding them toward their new life. When they finally reached Tucson, the town overwhelmed her. Adobe buildings sprawled in all directions. Freight wagons, riders, and people of every kind filled the streets. English, Spanish, and native tongues blended into a constant living hum. Ash stared wide-eyed at it all. Elena Cruz, Isela's cousin, waited at the depot just as promised. Younger than Isela, she shared the same direct warmth. "Clara, and this must be Ash," she said with a smile. "What a handsome boy." She pulled them into a firm embrace. "Come. Your room is ready, and I've made pozole. You must be exhausted." The house Elena shared with her husband and children was modest but clean, with a small private room set aside for Clara and Ash. After days on the road, it felt like sanctuary. In the days that followed, Elena helped Clara settle in. The school was a single room in an old mission building, serving Mexican, Anglo, and native children alike. The former teacher had married and left suddenly, and families were eager for lessons to resume. "You'll do well here," Elena assured her. "The pay isn't much, but it's steady, and the families look after their teachers." Clara threw herself into preparation, grateful for work that used her mind and purpose. Ash adapted quickly, charming Elena's children and exploring every corner of the house with fierce curiosity. But at night, when the house fell quiet and Ash slept, Clara would stand at her window and look south toward the dark mountains. Mexico lay closer here. Close enough that she could imagine Taza gazing at the same stars, thinking of them as she thought of him. A month into their new life, Clara was at the market with Ash when she noticed a familiar face, the Mexican man who had given her the money at the depot. He caught her eye and nodded subtly toward an elderly native woman selling herbs. Clara understood. She approached, Ash balanced on her hip. "You are the teacher," the woman said. It was not a question. "Yes." The woman studied Ash, then reached out and touched the medicine bundle still tied to his clothing. Clara had never removed it. "Good protection," the woman said with quiet approval. And Clara knew, without doubt, that they had not traveled alone for a single step. Then, lowering her voice, the woman added, "The one who sent this grows tired of Mexico. Borders still watched, soldiers still remember." Clara Whitlow's pulse quickened. "Is he well?" "Well enough," the woman replied. "But restless. A man like that is not made for hiding." She selected several dried herbs, wrapped them with care, and pressed the bundle into Clara's hands. "These help with teething. No charge for Shadow Walker's boy." Before Clara could respond, the woman turned and disappeared into the crowd. Encounters like this became part of Clara's new life, quiet links to Taza through people who respected him. A repaired shoe that required no payment, extra food left at her door, help that arrived without explanation. Always with the same unspoken understanding of who stood behind it all. The school became Clara's anchor. Teaching the children, watching their minds open gave her purpose beyond survival. Ash spent his days with Elena Cruz, or playing in the corner of the schoolroom, absorbing languages and lessons with the ease of the very young. His first word, to Clara's private delight, was "hello," spoken in Apache, taught by a shy student whose grandmother had whispered instructions to pass on the child's father's tongue. Clara never corrected the assumptions about Ash's parentage. Let them believe what they wished. The truth lived in her heart, and in the carved wooden figure she kept close. A woman riding through a storm, child in her arms, facing forward with courage. Months slipped by. Ash took his first steps in the school courtyard, chasing lizards with fierce determination. Sun-browned, sturdy, quick, his laughter could lift even the heaviest day. The turquoise Taza had given him was sewn into a small pouch, waiting for the day Ash would be old enough to understand its meaning. News from Mexico filtered north. Border tensions eased, little by little. The army had larger concerns now than one Apache warrior who had defended a fleeing family. Other, more infamous leaders had been killed or captured, making Shadow Walker seem less urgent by comparison. One day soon, Elena said one evening as they watched the children play. "My cousin writes that things are changing. New policies, less harsh. Maybe those in hiding can come home." Clara's heart lifted, but she had learned patience. Soon, in border country, could mean weeks or years. She would wait. The night before Ash's first birthday, Clara sat in her room sewing a small shirt for him. A soft knock at the door made her look up. Elena entered, her expression careful. "There's a man in the kitchen," she said quietly. "He says he brought something for Ash's birthday." Clara's hands went still. "A man," Elena added. "Apache. Very polite. Another man waits with him, so you're safe." Her eyes softened. "I thought you'd want to see." Clara set aside her sewing, heart pounding. It couldn't be, not yet. But when she entered the kitchen, her knees nearly failed her. It wasn't Taza. The man was younger, unfamiliar, but he carried a bundle wrapped in deerskin. His posture was formal, almost ceremonial. "You are the mother of the storm child," he said in careful English. "Yes." He unwrapped the bundle slowly, revealing a child's bow, beautifully made, sized for small hands. Eagle feathers adorned one end, the wood polished to a warm glow. "For his first birthday," the man said, "so he learns strength, straightness of arrow, truth of aim." He paused. "The one who made this says the border grows thin, says the storm that brought you together is passing. Clear skies are coming." Clara touched the bow with reverent fingers. Hours of work, hours of thought, planning for Ash's future. "Tell him," she said softly, steadying herself. "Tell him we are waiting. Tell him Ash grows strong, straight as any arrow." She faltered, overwhelmed. The messenger nodded, understanding what words could not carry. "I will tell him." After he left, Clara held the bow and wept, tears of joy, anticipation, and love that had endured distance, danger, and impossibility. The next day, Ash would turn 1. He had survived his violent arrival into the world, thrived against every expectation. And somewhere beyond the border, the man who had made that survival possible was planning his return. Clara moved to the window and looked south toward Mexico. The stars burned bright in the clear desert sky. She chose to take it as a sign. Clear skies were coming. The waiting was not over, but now it had meaning. "Soon," she whispered to the night wind. For the first time since leaving the trading post, Clara Whitlow truly believed it. 3 years had left their mark on her. Fine lines at the corners of her eyes from squinting into desert sun, a firmness to her jaw shaped by choices made and carried through. Ash, now 4, tore across the schoolyard with the other children, his laughter riding the afternoon breeze. He was tall for his age, lean and quick, with Clara's determined chin and eyes far older than his years. She had just dismissed her students when Elena Cruz appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral in a way that made Clara's pulse jump. "There's a man in town," Elena said quietly. "A trader from Mexico. He's at the mercantile, asking about the American teacher with the storm-born child." The chalk slipped from Clara's suddenly damp fingers. 3 years. 3 years of messages carried by strangers, of small gifts left without explanation, of silences that spoke louder than letters. 3 years of telling Ash stories, about his birth, about courage and mercy, about a man who might one day return. Is it him? She couldn't bring herself to say the words. "He's alone," Elena added, "dressed like a Mexican trader. But Manuel says—" Her voice dropped lower. "He walks like a warrior." Clara called Ash to her, keeping her voice steady. The boy came running, cheeks flushed with play and joy. He had grown so much, learned so much, fluent in English and Spanish, and, thanks to the Apache women who passed through town, he understood much of his father's tongue as well. "We're going to the mercantile," Clara said, smoothing his unruly hair. "Best behavior, Ash." "Yes, Mama." He slipped his small hand into hers. The walk felt both endless and impossibly short. What if it isn't him? What if it is? What do you say after 3 years? The mercantile buzzed with afternoon trade. Clara stepped inside, Ash at her side, her eyes scanning the room. Near the back, pretending interest in folded blankets, stood a man who stole the breath from her lungs. He wore loose white clothes, a broad hat shading his face, just as Elena had said. But Clara would have known those hands anywhere, that stillness, that awareness of everything around him. As if sensing her, he turned. Their eyes met. 3 years collapsed into nothing. Taza had changed. Threads of gray touched his hair. New lines marked his face. But his eyes were the same. Dark, deep, holding that rare blend of strength and quiet mercy that had once saved her life. Ash tugged at her hand. "Mama, why are you stopping?" The sound of the child's voice drew Taza's gaze downward. Clara watched him take in Ash. The straight back, the alert stance, the medicine bundle still worn faithfully against the boy's chest. Something shifted in Taza's face. A nakedness. A vulnerability she had never seen. Clara stepped forward, Ash beside her, stopping at a distance proper for a schoolteacher greeting a stranger. "Good afternoon," she said in Spanish, steady despite her racing heart. "Are you finding what you need?" "I believe so," Taza replied in the same language. His voice was exactly as she remembered, low, controlled, carrying more weight than words alone. "I seek supplies for a long journey, and perhaps," he paused, "information about the territory. I have been away some time." "The territory has changed," Clara said carefully. "New policies, more acceptance. Many who left have returned to make homes here." "That is good to hear." His eyes never left Ash. "Your son is strong," Taza said quietly. "He looks like one born to overcome hardship." "He was born in a storm," Clara replied. "It made him resilient." Ash, bored with adult talk, tugged at her hand again, then froze. His gaze locked onto something at Taza's belt. The carved wooden horse, worn smooth from years of carrying. "Mama!" Ash exclaimed, pointing. "He has a horse like yours!" Clara's breath caught. She had shown Ash the carving many times, told him it came from a brave man who never forgot them, and now that man stood before them. She had told him about the kind person who had made it, though she had never spoken the name. Taza slowly unhooked the carving from his belt and lowered himself to Ash's height. "You know this horse?" he asked gently. Ash nodded at once. "Mama has one. She keeps it in her special box." He frowned, searching his memory. "She says a friend made it. A friend who helped us in the storm." "A wise woman, your mother," Taza said quietly. He held the carving out. "Would you like to hold it?" Ash looked up at Clara Whitlow for permission. At her nod, he accepted the wooden horse with careful hands, studying it with the same intensity his mother brought to books. "It's the same," he decided, "but different. This one is more worn, like it's traveled far, very far." Taza's mouth curved faintly. "Through Mexico and back, across deserts and mountains, but it always remembered where it wanted to return." Around them, other customers had begun to notice. Clara caught murmurs, curious glances. In Tucson, an Apache man, even dressed as a Mexican trader, speaking closely with a white woman and child, did not go unnoticed. "Perhaps," she said evenly, "you'd like to see the mission gardens. They're beautiful this time of day. She added softly, and peaceful. Understanding flickered in Taza's eyes. That would be welcome. They left the mercantile separately. Clara took a wandering route with Ash, pointing out birds and flowers as if on a simple lesson walk. The mission gardens were quiet, save for an old priest dozing in the shade. She chose a bench beneath an ancient olive tree. Moments later, Taza appeared, moving with that familiar, soundless grace. For a long moment, they only looked at one another. 3 years of absence hung between them, heavy and real. Then Ash broke the silence with a child's direct honesty. Are you the one who helped Mama in the storm? The one who made the horse? Taza looked to Clara, silently asking. Her throat tight, she nodded. Yes, he said. I helped bring you into this world, little warrior. Ash considered that gravely. Thank you, he said, formally, just as Clara had taught him. Then his face brightened. I still have the medicine bundle. Mama says I must never lose it, and I have the turquoise you sent. But Mama says I can't wear it until I'm bigger. You have taught him well, Taza said softly to Clara. He knows who he is, she replied. Both sides. He knows he carries 2 people's blood, and that he must walk between worlds. A heavy path for one so small, Taza murmured. He's strong, Clara said, like the one who saved him. They spoke while the afternoon light slanted through the olive branches. Taza told her of Mexico, of defending villages from bandits, of patience, of years spent earning legal papers, of new policies, of changing attitudes that had finally opened a door he once believed sealed forever. Clara shared Ash's milestones, his first words, his first steps, his strange way with animals, his sharp mind that soaked up languages like desert sand drinking rain. And you? Taza asked quietly. You are? Well, she said. I teach. I have a good life here. Friends, purpose. She hesitated. But I've never stopped watching the southern horizon. Ash had wandered off a short distance, stalking a lizard with solemn determination. Taza watched him, wonder and something like pain crossing his face. I have papers now, he said at last, legal ones, and I have bought land, near the border. Good land. With water. He looked back at Clara. A place where a man could raise horses, a place where a woman could teach if she wished, where a child could grow up knowing both worlds without being forced to choose between them. Clara Whitlow's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. What are you saying? She asked. He turned fully toward her then, and in his eyes she saw everything the years had carried. The loneliness, the patience, the hope that had survived distance and silence. I am saying I am no longer a hunted man, Taza said quietly. I am saying I have built a place where we could make a life, if you are willing. He hesitated, as if steadying himself. I am saying I carried you both in my heart across every mile, and now I ask if you would let me carry you in truth. Taza. Clara's voice fractured. I know I am not the man Ash was born to, he went on. I know I cannot offer the life you might have with a white man, but I swear I will protect you both, provide for you, teach Ash the best of my people's ways while honoring yours. Clara thought of the 3 long years of waiting, of raising Ash with stories she could never fully explain, of the empty place at the table that friendship alone could not fill. Ash, she called. The boy came running, lizard forgotten. Yes, Mama? This man has asked us something important, Clara said gently. He has land nearby, horses. He wonders if we might live there, start a school, learn the desert together. Ash's eyes widened as he looked from his mother to Taza. Would you teach me to ride, and to track, And the words in your language? All that, Taza said solemnly. And more. Ash considered this like a judge weighing fate. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that lit the world. Yes. When do we go? Clara laughed through her tears. Soon, my storm child. First we gather our things, say goodbye to our friends. And marry, Taza added firmly. Properly, in the church if you wish, so no one can question, so Ash has a legal father, protection under the law. Clara stepped closer. Is that a proposal, Mr. Shadowwalker? It is, he said, though Shadowwalker is a name for hiding. My true name is Taza. It means one who wanders. His voice softened. But I am tired of wandering. I want to be still. With you. With Ash. Ash wrapped himself around Taza's leg, chattering about horses and tracking and all he wanted to learn. Clara met Taza's eyes. Then yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. 3 months later, on a day when unexpected rain coaxed flowers from the desert floor, Clara stood in the doorway of her new home. A solid adobe house facing distant mountains, a corral nearby where horses grazed. Ash raced between the buildings, his laughter mixing with the nickering of colts, free in a way he had never been before. Taza emerged from the barn with the easy confidence of a man standing on his own land. He had legally adopted Ash, giving the boy both protection and belonging. Their wedding had been simple. Isela and Mateo Cruz had traveled from the trading post to stand witness, tears cutting clean paths through dust-lined faces. Any regrets? Taza asked, joining Clara in the doorway. She leaned into his strength. Only that it took so long. Some journeys can't be rushed, he said. The storm brought us together, but we needed clear skies to build a life. Ash came running, a young foal trotting after him like a loyal dog. Papa, Mama, look what I taught her, he announced, demonstrating a bit of training Taza had shown him, pride shining bright. Clara smiled, her heart so full it ached. This was what she had dreamed of. Not distant shores or imagined futures, but this place. A home where Ash could grow proud of all he was, where Apache tradition and careful schooling blended into something stronger. As the sun sank low, painting their desert world in gold and crimson, the family gathered for supper, whole at last. Ash said grace in 3 languages, his careful seriousness melting into a grin that made both his parents smile. Then he launched into the day's adventures, words tripping over one another with excitement, hands moving as if the stories were alive in the air. When the dishes were cleared and Ash finally slept, Clara Whitlow and Taza sat side by side on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast desert sky. They were the same stars that had witnessed a storm, a birth, a long separation, and now a life made whole. Thank you, Clara said softly into the quiet. For what? Taza asked. For saving us, she said. For waiting. For being brave enough to come back. Taza drew her closer, his arm firm and warm around her shoulders. You saved me too, he said. You gave me a reason to endure, a reason to hope. Ash gave me purpose. In the distance, coyotes called to one another, their voices carrying across the open land. The sound was wild, ancient. But here, within this small circle of lamplight and shared breath, there was peace. The storm that had once torn the world apart had passed. In its wake, it had left something stronger than fear or loss could ever be. A family shaped by hardship, tempered by time and distance, and finally bound together by choice. The desert wind moved through the mesquite trees, carrying the scent of sage and cooling earth. Clara closed her eyes and breathed it in, feeling a certainty settle deep within her, one forged by suffering, patience, and love. She was no longer wandering. She was no longer waiting. She was home. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours. Thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals, narration, and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.